small confession to make. When I made that little teaser at the beginning of my last video about maybe making this a magazine-fed blaster, I had no idea if it could actually be done. I couldn't find any material that anybody else had done it, and, well, it's taxing, because as you've noticed on my channel, I'm not exactly the go-to person for flywheeling. In fact, this is still bone stock, running off alkalines and everything. I'm not really a huge fan of flywheels, but I have dabbled with them in the past, the best of which was using a NiCad battery on a Rapid Strike, which was probably the coolest thing I've ever used at Dart Wars, and yet it was still terrible because I literally soldered the positive and negative connections to the battery tray and then hooked up the battery. It was absolutely atrocious, so I do not consider myself well in the realm of flywheel modding, and yet they're some of the most popular blasters, and for good reason. They have usually semi-auto or full auto fire, and they pack quite a punch. They can hit that ceiling where foam darts just can't go any farther relatively quickly and easily. And, well, bar none if you're on the flywheel side or the stringer side, flywheels are a force to be reckoned with. That is 100% sure. So what the hell is this thing? Well, it is in fact a magazine-fed Dart Zone Scorpion. And if you aren't familiar with the Dart Zone Scorpion, it is one hell of a blaster. It is, well, it's not magazine-fed by default, obviously. It is a belt-fed blaster that hits something like 100 FPS out of the box. I mean, the rate of fire is nothing to write home about, but it hits really, really hard. So it got a lot of attention, and for good reason. But that belt's a little bit of an issue. It's awkward to reload. The blaster itself is $20, while buying a replacement belt is $15, which is ridiculous. And that begs the question, why not just make it magazine-fed? And thus, it has been done. And, honestly, it wasn't really that difficult. Allow me to explain. Basically, and I don't have enough space on my phone to record every single step of the way, but basically, I just cut out a bunch of plastic, test fitted the magazine in there. Once I got it firing and working, I hot glued it, and then I went over that with epoxy putty. As you can see, my horrible epoxy putty job right there. Can't win them all. I'm not really much of a cosmetic modder, which is weird because this thing is painted. We'll get to that. But yeah, it was just a bunch of test fitting, and of course removing a lot of empty parts. You will notice the barrel does not spin anymore. That was not deliberate. I tried everything I could to make sure I could keep that barrel spinning because it's a cool little feature. Unfortunately, while test firing this at one point, I had my hand up here and was firing. Okay, it's good. I put my thumb on the little gear in there. There's one gear on one motor that rotates this, and it completely crapped out the motor. The motor died. There was no bringing it back. But that solved one problem I had, because while I had the magwell a little bit over here, because that would, give space for that motor up there, I had a lot of feeding issues. A lot of them. And once that was gone, well, I removed that, moved the thing just over a little bit, and that fixed every issue I had. So, once it was good to go, all I had to do was, well, epoxy putty that on, which I did. It is only epoxy puttied on the battery tray. It is not epoxy puttied up in the front. That's more than enough stability for it, and I can still take this blaster apart if I choose. Once that's done, well, no feeding issues, and it needed a paint job because we had blue, orange, green, gray. It was Why is it painted like this? Well, for one, I already had the white. And for two, well, gray was the next easiest thing to go with. So, I just went out and bought gray spray paint, and I painted the entire thing white with a Duplicolor vinyl dye. First time using that, I might add. And then went over everything with a Duplicolor vinyl gray. And I did tape off a lot of things, and it took a lot of time to tape everything down. And other than that, I didn't really do anything too special. This does not have a clear coat on it yet. I should probably do that, but it's well resilient to any kind of scratching or damaging already. But I didn't do any sanding, I barely washed the thing, and yet the paint application still worked fine. So, while you can go overboard and primer the thing, and I was considering doing that, the entire point of painting this was just to kind of make this a little more bearable. So I tried to go about it in the most primitive way possible, and it worked. Is it perfect? Hell no! I am absolutely terrible at using spray cans to paint stuff. That doesn't mean I've completely given up on airbrushing. In fact, as of this recording, which is what, I think it's Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday, I went to Deseret Industries today and found an Iwata paintbrush. Not paintbrush, airbrush. Which are ridiculously expensive, and I got mine for basically nothing in terms of airbrushing. Haven't had a chance to test it out yet to make sure I didn't waste my money, but I got a new airbrush. So the only reason why this hasn't been airbrushed is because I just don't have a space to do it right now. I have to lug all of my stuff outside, sit on the ground, and paint, and that doesn't bode well for trying to paint. But I have not given up. I still have all my stuff for that, and well, it takes a lot of practice, much like using the spray cans. The Duplicolor vinyl dye is way easier to use than any other kind of paint application I've tried before. It doesn't run all that much, and it dries pretty much instantly. Again, no primer. I didn't use any primer, and everything still works. I didn't tape this off. Still clicks in just fine. Trigger, good to go. So, if you're looking to paint something, I would definitely start with that. Plus, very, very important, there is no glossy stupidness on this, which is something I hate. It has a matte finish right out of the can, and that is very, very important to me, because when you have a matte finish on something, and I'll, again, go into detail on this on a later video, I've been meaning to make that video for a while, it makes it look more like metal. When you have this bright, glossy stuff on it, it makes it look like a toy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just don't like it. Some people do. I mean, there are people out there that have, you know, nickel-plated freaking firearms and gold-plated and all this stuff that's really flashy and not my thing. To do the weathering, and the weathering was only done because there was some minor issues with the paint job, I used a Gundam marker. This Gundam marker, to be precise. This is just a metallic silver Gundam marker, and I doodled on it. And that takes your eyes off any kind of imperfections that I might have done on it, which is a neat little trick, and I tried to wear it in places that would obviously be worn. And the barrel here is just the original barrel, but cut down significantly so it would still be small. Now, the entire mechanism in there that rotates the chain is gone. The arm that would rotate the chain is cut off. And the thermistor was removed. This was not deliberate either, as the thermistor broke off. And I couldn't find my solder, but I did find my soldering iron, and thankfully they do such a crap job soldering on these that I could just use the original solder and get it back up and running. Other than that, no other modifications have done. Obviously, the motor that was in the front here is removed. I don't notice any specific improvements from doing that, although all I did was clip the wires and make sure they wouldn't short anything else out. So, yeah, it's pretty bone stock in there. You could definitely do a motor replacement, and this pusher gearbox is, well, dumb. It doesn't work all that well. It's rather terrible. But you gotta keep in mind, this thing is not very big at all. It is absolutely tiny. It's magazine fed. Why does it feed from the side? Well, the practical reason is because it was way easier to do. You could possibly make it feed from the bottom. You would have a hell of a time doing it, though. The other tactical reason is, A, if I'm going up to cover, and I wanted to put this on cover, let's pretend this is a box, putting this down is a lot easier when I can put it all the way up here. Because if I had a magazine there, I'd have to either reach over the cover, or if the cover's too big, I couldn't do that, so I'd have a lot more of my body exposed. But there is one more cop-out reason, and that is, with it loading from the side, I can effortlessly use the 5-round drum that, you know, jams all the time on any blaster that isn't a Raider or Rampage. Not going to have a problem on this because the spring isn't fighting gravity, it's just kind of lazily pushing the dart in. So, no issues with feeding right there. Again, it's the practical reasons that we do what we do. Overall, I am quite pleased with this. Obviously, I spent the time making it. And if you're if you have a Dart Zone Scorpion and you haven't really either you don't know what to do with it or you lost the chain, I found this at a Goodwill for $2. That's why I have it. Well, If you have one, you already know it's a powerhouse. Runs off alkaline batteries, and with the thermistor removed, I could just shove in truss pliers in there if I wanted to. Or IMRs. IMRs are better. And, well, it's an effortless way to get yourself something pretty cool right there. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than a Rapid Strike, that's for sure. And to make this better, you would clearly want to put a Rapid Strike pusher motor back there. But out of the box, it's not too bad. Let's load up a couple of darts right here. And this is where it's going to jam or something and make me look like a total goober. But let's load a couple of darts, switch it on, feed a magazine in, and fire. Yep, the rate of fire isn't all that great, but it's perfectly usable. And this is a very, very easy mod to do. So, I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, something completely different.